I think it is absolutely time to hit the panic button on Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. I mean, I think that Gibbs is an extremely talented back, but the Lions and Dan Campbell have made it very clear that they are not going to commit to using him on every down at any point this season. We saw DeAndre Swift go through similar pains in Detroit where he'd only see like 8 carries a game, but still managed to score like 13 fantasy points, something like that. I fear that Gibbs is headed down the same path. He's going to be an extremely efficient back that I think will be a good flex play, down the stretch as the year goes on. But I don't think that he's ever going to return on his third round draft capital that people were spending on him in PPR leagues this year. The only concern that I have about with Gibbs is the opportunity that he's going to be given rather than the actual talent that he has. Because I think he's a really talented back, but I think he's going to be limited by opportunity. What do y'all think about this? Y'all agree with this? Y'all think it's time to panic on Jahmyr Gibbs?
Yeah, I mean, what you said, he's definitely not going to return on that third round value. And I'm a Gibbs owner, but I wouldn't say I'm panicking. I do think he'll be a low end running back two for the rest of the year with some maybe RB1 finishes or high end RB2 finishes. But I'm not panicking. I'd rather wait and see on him. I do think he's very game script dependent, and on competitive shootouts, he'll be featured more than Montgomery.
Yeah, I'd say that I would be panicking if I had him, but panicking and he's just stuck on my team because I'm not trading him for what someone's going to give me. Like, I'm not getting rid of him because you just have to hold on to him and kind of hope that he breaks out. This is the thing that I'm concerned with. Like you said, it's nothing to do with talent, but so far they've used Montgomery as the ground and pound guy, and no one's been able to really stop it. It's been effective, so it's like they don't really have to go to Gibbs. Like, no one's stopping Montgomery. That's the only thing I'm concerned with until they figure out a way to stop. Because they're totally different run styles. They use them differently. Until they figure out a way to stop Montgomery and become less effective, I'd be a little concerned.
Yeah, I'm agreeing there too. The Lions are what, 3-1? They've only lost one game. They've had
Been
some
on
big.
fire, yeah.
They've had some big wins. I mean, and the same thing. Dan Campbell is a former offensive lineman. I think he was a former offensive lineman coach. So he loves running the ball. Grounding and pounding is his game. Pause. And I just think that, I mean, like, they haven't really stopped it with Montgomery. They're just feeding him the rock. While on a per touch basis, Gibbs has been much better as far as yards and producing. But it's working so well for them right now. Why stop? I do think they are still trying to work him in because he's a rookie, and probably part of that is due to learning the playbook. I mean, the same thing could be said about Montgomery about learning the playbook, but I think they're still trying to work him in, not ease him in because he's their long term asset. They're going to want him for years, and so they don't want to overload him in his first year. So I think while they can still run the ball with Montgomery, feed him 30, 25 touches a game, they're going to do that. So that's just how I
Yeah,
feel too.
I like Gibbs as a dynasty asset much
Yeah,
more than I like
yeah,
him in
for sure,
redraft this
100%.
year. Yeah.
All right, so the guy that I'm panicking on after 4 weeks of play through this point is Dallas Goedert. The reason I think that I'm worried for this dude is because from last year to this year, his usage has been completely different. His last year, some of his last year stats, he was averaging 5.8 targets a game. His average depth of target was 10.2 yards, and his catch percentage was right at 80%. This year, he's averaging 4.8 targets a game, so one target less, and he's averaging 4.6 yards per target, which is over half less than his previous year, and his catch percentage is 68.4%, which is also down. I just think his usage is they're using not like the talent he is. They're flowing everything. I think a lot of that has to do with DeAndre Swift really just balling, dude. Once he gets the ball in his hand, it seems like it's like 6-7 yards a carry or a touch. They're obviously going to use A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in the passing game 100%. And they're also using the shit out of DeAndre Swift on the ground. And I think because they're running the ball so much and with so much effectiveness, that's taken away from Goddard's passing work. I still think he's a great talent, and whenever they do decide to give him the targets that are more downfield, I think that he can produce. But from what we've seen so far, I mean, the Eagles are 4-0 or 3-0. They have no reason to stop doing what they're doing. They're kind of the same thing with the Gibbs situation. So I'm worried about Goddard. I don't really know what to do with him. I mean, I'm looking for other options, but his value is so low right now. I mean, only thing you really can do is hold and pick somebody else up off the waiver if you can.
Yeah. I'm pretty worried about him too, because like you said, if you have him, you probably drafted him. I mean, you didn't draft him super high, but he's one of the top tight ends generally taken off the board. So it sucks that, I mean,
Top
you have
three.
your top guys, but
He's
yeah.
probably like a 7th or 8th round pick or something. But yeah,
Well, yeah, but I'm saying you could have there's other guys you could scoop off the waiver wire. Like, my point is that like he's not like some scrub of a tight end, so it sucks that he's really underperforming, especially for the talent he is. I would agree that it probably does. I mean, that's the only real thing I can pinpoint is that their running game is drastically improved from last year.
It was still
And
good, but like Swift's like really
yeah, it's just different.
fucking
Yeah,
really
he's
good.
much more effective. And another thing too is like, I, I don't know. I feel like they haven't even really tried to target him in the red zone any. Sometimes that can help bail you out, and he's a big body. I don't know. I'm not really sure what's going on, but I'm definitely concerned because there's plenty of other options I'd almost rather just roll out there.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you guys. I'd be panicking a little bit because he was definitely a middle round guy, someone that you could have got a good wide receiver in that range for, and he's not returning his value. And what you just said, Sap, about him not being used in the red zone is because usually your tight end, your bigger dudes are one of your best red zone targets. But AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts are amazing in the
Eating it
red
up.
zone.
Yeah.
Like you said, the rushing game is just so good. Then you have Smitty and AJ Brown, and then Hurts. There's not enough mouths to feed in this offense. If one of the wide receivers to go down, I would expect Goddard to definitely ramp up.
Smith had went down a considerable amount of time last year, and that's whenever Goddard was like really eating for a few weeks.
Yep.
I think Smitty's also taken away from his workload as well because I mean he's just looking insane,
yeah.
dude.
I'm gonna actually disagree with what y'all have said, not because I'm like super high on Dallas Goddard, but just because of how bad the tight end position has been in general. I mean, like, I still think Goddard, with as bad as he's been, he's probably a top 8 player at the tight end position every single week, no matter what. And I'm not saying like the tight end 2 right now is probably averaging like 10 points per game. So I'm just like, whenever you're looking at the tight end position and it's like you're looking at guys, it's like Goddard is not a guy who I feel bad about starting whenever you look at the position as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, we have guys like Darren Waller, who was taken in the 3rd or 4th round, who have been putting up similar, if not worse, numbers than Goddard. And then you have guys who were undrafted, like Sam Laporta, who's the tight end 2 right now. So just given the state of the tight end market right now, I'm not hating, having to put Goddard in. Like, I'm definitely not panicking on him, just given the landscape of the tight end position.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's just going in, I had higher hopes for him this
much
year.
more from him.
Yeah. I mean, I understand in general as a whole it's down, but you just expect
He was one of those guys that whenever you like put him out there every week, you expect him to be almost like a difference maker for your squad for the
like
other
10
teams that
points
kind of had shitty tight ends.
Yeah.
And now it's like kind of the shitty tight ends that weren't really drafted that high or were drafted in the late rounds or picked up off of waivers. A lot of them are hitting guys like Laporta, Ertz, Jake Ferguson for Dallas. So, I mean,
But I'm rolling Goddard out there over Jake fucking Ferguson every week. You heard it here first.
Yeah, so the guy I'm panicking on after 4 weeks of watching football is Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders was one of those dead zone running backs that was getting taken around. Alexander Madison, James Conner, James Cook, those guys. And he was one of the ones that had a clear path to a good workload, and it's just simply not paying off. I mean, he hasn't got in the end zone yet this year. Carolina can't score points. He's not running efficiently. And Chuba has looked just as good as Miles Sanders. So this might be leaning towards a committee, and even if it's not, he's not getting valuable touches in the red zone or enough receptions to make up in PPR league. So I'm hitting the panic button on Miles Sanders.
Yeah, so coming into the season, I was super low on Miles Sanders. Wasn't too happy about him. I did end up taking him in one league, though, and he's so far this year he's proven to be like a pretty good player for me. With that being said, I did see a significant decrease in usage this past week, and I would be looking to move on from him. So I agree. I think it is time to get rid of Miles Sanders, but I think he has returned on his value so far. But going forward, I'm not too big of a fan of Miles Sanders. I think now would be a good time to sell. So I think I am ready to hit that.
I
panic
do
button.
think on this week's usage, I think he was hurt with like a
Yeah.
rib injury or something, so that could have played into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
He definitely did go down.
Yeah, I'm pretty
but,
sure he's hurt. He was hurt for a while.
But it's just, I feel like in general, they just haven't been able to move the ball running.
Yeah, their
you know?
offense looks bad, man. Whew.
They're, I mean, that one game in particular, Andy Dalton threw the ball 58 times or something outrageous.
Yeah, their
So-
offensive line is I thought last year like they were running the ball pretty well, and their offensive line was like one of their strong points of their team. But this year, every time Bryce has dropped back to pass, he's been pressured. Their offensive line has played horrible, and that's translated to the whole offense. I mean, they have to throw short little passes, check down throws. They can't throw nothing downfield because there's no time for Bryce or Andy Dalton. And they have no fucking run game because they have no holes to run through.
Yeah,
they get no
and-
push.
Correction. He did score in week 3 against Seattle on the ground. That's his only touchdown of the year.
Yeah, but also the last thing I'll note is that their defense, they took a lot of losses on defense, so they're just going to continue to play from behind because they're not going to be able to stop their opponents. So they're just going to be throwing the ball even more in a run game that was already weak.
Yep.
So the player that I have fading out is going to be Jahan Dotson. Going into the season, I had high expectations for him, but it just hasn't panned out. If I have him, I'm pretty concerned right now because of where I drafted him. It wasn't too high, but I did have him just outside of my starting lineup. And I considered him to be a pretty good option going forward. He seems to be the third option on his team. And you would have thought that after the start of his season last year that he would have been just higher up. Curtis Samuel's come back. He had a good game last week. And even going into overtime last week, he only had 12.5 points, but he scored a touchdown in overtime. So he was setting himself up for another bad game. Right now, I'm just really concerned. If I have him, I don't even know what you can do with him because nobody's going to trade you for him. So you kind of stuck with him. And if he continues to play this poor, he might even be a drop candidate. The only way that I see him getting better, and I would say he would probably take a significant step, is if somebody goes down. And with Curtis Samuel, that's always an option. So I'm going to hold on to him for a little longer. I'm not ready to drop him yet, but I'm definitely hitting the panic button.
Yeah, he's definitely not off to that hot start like you were hoping to have repeat from last year. I think Terry McLaurin is really establishing his alpha role as the best receiver in that offense. And even though Sam Howell's been balling, over expectations, I don't know if he could support 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers. The value of his targets just might not be there. But I think I'm not ready to cut him just yet. He's coming off a couple tough matchups, and he has a better schedule moving forward. So I'd like to hold for another week or 2 before hitting the panic button too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's definitely time to hit the panic button on dude. But like with that being said, if you can afford to drop Jahan Dotson, then your team's probably 4-0 right now. So I don't think he's like on the verge of being a drop candidate quite yet. But I mean, I'm just being honest. What has this dude really done since he's gotten into the league? I know he was like a first round pick, and like dude had high expectations, but I just don't see what everybody else saw in him going into this year's draft. He was, in my opinion, he was drafted 2 or 3 rounds earlier than he should have. So yeah, I'm definitely hitting the panic button on him, especially considering where he was drafted. He was drafted to be like a flex player, or like you said, first guy on your bench type guy.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely hitting that panic button.
Yeah, I'm same boat as y'all. He's not a guy. I mean, I wouldn't drop him. He's not a guy you're gonna drop.
I'm saying if he continues this for the next couple of weeks, though, and there's somebody on the wire,
he's a guy. I'm either holding and hoping for the best. He's a good receiver. He's a good NFL receiver. If you look at his separation stats and the way he separates from defenders and gets open. He's consistently getting open versus all coverages, press, man, zone. But he's not a guy I'm looking to drop. If anything, I'm either holding or based on my team, maybe trying to package him with someone else and trading up for another receiver, another asset. I'm not going to.
Yeah, find the dynasty nerd in your league and give him Jahan Dotson.
yeah.
He probably loves that
Yeah.
fucker.
Yeah, do that.